There are tons of weird circumstances that exist in the world that people think are evidence of time travel, but perhaps none are as convincing as Mozart's Fantasia in D minor. Dude time traveled 100 years into the future, and then midway through realized that he should probably cover up his tracks. Just listen to this. Okay, so first of all, I suppose on some planet you might be able to say, this is Mozart, really? Okay, I guess maybe it's Mozart, but here's the thing, Mozart is much more widely known for things that sound like... So to immediately get something that sounds, A, so dark like this, but also has the chord structure that's going on here. Now, one of my favorite things in classical music is to break down things that aren't really meant to be thought of as like melody chords and just look at the harmonic structure, because I think it reveals a lot about maybe what the composer was thinking, but also about things that we have pulled from classical music and that we still use in a modern context today. It's why it's super helpful sometimes to look at classical music through the lens of harmony. And if we do that here in the very first section, we get very clearly a D minor chord. We repeat that. Now we do something really cool where we keep that D on the bottom, but we're changing the chord. Now this chord, I'm looking at this as a G minor 6 chord, but we're using the D pedal tone underneath. Now the bass note moves, and we get this chord. This very clearly D7. So far we've gone from D minor to G minor 6 and now to D7. Where are we going after this? I don't know, but a cool thing about that chord is that we have the C as the root note here. So we're kind of like, it's really interesting, and we're gonna see this again, even though we sort of jump around a little bit, but we're using that descending bass note pattern, right? We're not making huge jumps in our root note. We started off just with D under a D minor chord, then we kept that D for the G minor 6 chord, and now we just moved down 1, which is a really interesting choice, because if we had just stayed on D and used the pedal tone all the way through, well, we're still playing. I mean, this is a D7 chord, right? Maybe Mozart wanted to differentiate this from this in a much more clear way. And I think if you drop that note down to the C, it does a good job of that, because it really tells. I mean, not only is the dominant chord, even just sitting there using the root, its root as the bass note, that does tell us that, like, hey, we're going somewhere. This clearly is not resolved, right? That tritone, I mean, it's a dominant chord. Dominant chords want to go somewhere. But if you want to give that even more suspense, you can drop the note and actually play your root note as the dominant 7th, right? That's such an interesting choice here. And we do resolve, and we start climbing down before arriving at the 5. Let's see how we get there. So coming off that D7 chord with the C, the dominant 7th in the bass. Now watch this. This is so cool. I want you to take note of that a few measures before, this whole section right here. Get a load of that. I mean, come on. So this to me, I'm looking at this as G minor. Now, that makes a lot of sense because if you watch where we go after that, G minor, and that's our ninth, right? So we're using... That's such a nice sort of way to kind of like create a little bit of tension and then resolve it just within the chord before we go anywhere else. We're going to continue that exact thing, and we're going to move down in whole steps. We go from G minor to F major, and then out of nowhere we go to E flat major. Now you may notice that all those chords I just described, the roots of those chords, the name of the chord that I just said, is not the root. And that's because throughout this entire section right here, we're using thirds as the root. Here's what I mean. If this is a G minor chord, that means that the third is B flat, the minor third, right? We're going to use the third as the root note. And now we're just going to take this shape and we're going to move it down by whole steps. We are going to change the chord quality because when we go from the G minor here, now it's major, and we stick with the major, dropping another whole step to our E flat major, right? And we're using the 9-1 resolution on each one of those chords. There's the 9-1, 9-1, 9-1, and now we go somewhere different. Whoa! Look at that! Yikes! What a chord, right? Now that obviously is this chord. I'm gonna guess based on where we just were. We went from G minor to F major to E flat major. We're getting a diminished chord, but what diminished is it? I guess we could call it just G sharp diminished. Yeah, that would work fine. And that actually that does work really well because then it pulls to that A major, and that's the A major is our 5 chord. And here's that little. Each chord tone, we're gonna create a chromatic passing tone underneath the chord tone. Half step below, chord tone. Half step below, chord tone. Half step below, chord tone. And then we just hold it there. It's so sick, and it's so like not Mozart. You know, this is something you would expect I don't know, more out of like Chopin or something. It feels very romantic, you know what I mean? And then we continue that process by introducing the next section. I feel like this section is starting to hint at like, oh, okay, now maybe this is Mozart. It feels a little more traditional Mozart until we blow the whole thing out of the water with this. Huh. Okay. That was maybe a little unconventional, but surely it's just going to go back to Mozart. Yeah, let's hear this. Excuse me? Like, what? Mozart? Hello? So when we start this section, we get this really nice melody that, like I said, I mean, it does kind of feel like it could, you know, it feels somewhat familiar, even though the delivery is definitely perhaps a different style than the typical. By the way, Mozart didn't write in minor keys that often. This already is like maybe a little bit darker than we would typically expect from Mozart, but it's delivered very, I mean, Adagio is very slow. I don't know if it's correct or not, but for me, I always feel this melody line, this section, it's just my brain wants to interpret it like Chopin. You know what I mean? Rather than this like much more formulaic, Mozart composition, I kind of want to just pull the expression out of it. I don't know if that's correct or not, but to me it works. Whoa! Dig that. So harmonically there, this is pretty simple. We start with a D minor chord. This is our A7 chord, our 5 chord. And then we stay on the A7. So that's it. It's just 1, 5, 1. And then that's our 1 chord, and then our 5 chord, but now we have the flat 9. So this whole time, yeah, we're really just going back and forth from D minor to A7. Same thing again with the flat 9. This is interesting. That's E7, A7, D major. There's that G sharp diminished that we heard in the previous section, and that again leads us to the 5 chord. Right? And that is like, okay, kind of Mozart, you know what I mean? But then we get the next measure, and it goes like this. That is just wild. I mean, talk about totally unconventional for the time. This is 1782, by the way, when this piece was written. Fun fact, it wasn't actually published until after Mozart died. Unfortunately, Mozart was not able to finish it. Someone else had to finish it, but hey, probably because he got back in his time machine and went back to the future or something. And then we get this brilliant section. Another super cool section that actually we've sort of changed. Now that I'm looking at this, we've kind of changed like our home base, because we start. I'm looking at this, even though the notes that we actually get are like this D diminished. To me, that's the upper extension of an E7 chord, and I'll tell you why. Because the next place we're going is A minor. So to me, that's like a 5-1. And then we get it again. Yeah, so to me, this whole thing is going between E7 and A minor. And then this section, this is deceivingly difficult to play on the piano. You got it, because it's like, you have to learn this whole... It's almost like two different scales. This is like A major, but it starts on A minor. Now we flip it major, and now it goes, this is like D minor. Oh, but now the F is sharp now. You know what I mean? It kind of goes through, and then the whole time on the offbeats, you're doing this descending, not chromatic line, and that's what sometimes throws people off. Harder than it looks. Now we get that same exact melody again, but we're now up a fifth, sorry. We're up a fifth. Ooh, this is slightly detuned. I will not play along. Ooh, we're starting to go somewhere. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. So this, oh, that's actually really interesting now that I'm looking at it this way. I'll tell you why in a second. So this is like a C sharp diminished, right? And then we get this kind of like a cadenza in a way, almost like it's like it's Franz Liszt or something. That is so sick. And the thing I was gonna mention before, because we started here, and then, wow, that is such an interesting scale. It really does stick to what we just played. This whole cadenza is just gonna be a combination of notes completing that scale. We add the F and the D. Those are the only ones that we didn't play in this one this one chord leading up. We add F and D to complete the scale, but other than that, we're just playing the notes that we just played. Now we drop it a half step to get a C diminished. So it's like we're going to go where? Another one of these. Those sections are just so wild to me because this chromaticism is not something we would expect from Mozart in the 1780s. It's just not. He must have just, I don't know, like he's just seeing into the future. So the piece continues until we finally reach the allegretto portion, and that is when we go, he snapped out of it, because then it sounds like this. Classic Mozart, you know what I mean? So I don't know what was going on in the beginning part of the Fantasia in D minor, but I gotta tell you, it really seems like Mozart, phased briefly into the future and heard some stuff that was way beyond the 1780s, because yikes, it's just so crazy to hear him writing in this manner so early, it's still in the classical period. I don't know, this is so cool to me to hear, when you start hearing like things that are influenced by other things, right? So it's like this came in 1782, and then so many things after it were clearly influenced by what was going on here. So yeah, for a moment, it's almost like we get a brief look into the future harmonically and stylistically, and all in 1780. That just boggles my mind. So yeah, Mozart must have time traveled 100 years into the future to write this, and then he kind of snapped out of it and went, oh, shouldn't have let anybody know that I could do that. I just had to cover this one today because it's absolutely fascinating to me, and thought it might be interesting to you. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Month of Music, and we will see you tomorrow.